What do you mean what's best for BRIDGECast? Having people come over here and commandeer the mics while we're talking in the middle of a sentence?
Your voice is actually freaking me out right now. I was thinking, oh my god.
Welcome to BRIDGECast. This is episode 3, I believe. This week we have a little bit of a lighter set of hosts and therefore a little bit lighter set of topics, so we may actually wind up with a bit of a shorter episode. But to start off, I'm Brandon. I'm the founder of BRIDGECast, and I'm in the third year of architecture at the University of Waterloo School of Architecture. And with me today is...
I'm Kelsey. I'm second year at the University of Waterloo School of Architecture.
Cool. And
I am Samiha. Same school, same year.
Nice. And I'll get out the mission statement because I think that's something people have been wondering why we do this. BRIDGECast is something that I created because I felt that people were having other conversations outside of architecture, but when you're inside the School of Architecture, it's very hard to have a non-architecture conversation. And so, kind of similar to other initiatives like this, I decided to try and bring it to a space that wasn't the school, to where we could talk about different topics and in some way contextualize them and make them relevant to people our age, everything from politics to economics, or even just simply pop culture and how that affects us, and with a little bit of like a architectural undertone to all of it. So that's what the mission statement of BRIDGECast is, and that's what I hope we're doing with all of the episodes we put out thus far. And in terms of today's topics, I looked into, I'm going to talk about the decline of people cooking versus the cost of food, because I think there's an interesting relationship to talk about in there, and I want to discuss that. And Kelsey, you were going to talk about?
I'm going to do a feminist overview of pornography.
So the adult film industry.
Yes.
Okay. And what about it were you thinking of diving into?
I'm basically going to dive into the different positions of feminists on pornography, or the adult film industry, and I'm going to discuss my views and also why I stand in this way. Okay.
And Samiha, you're going to talk about what today?
I'm talking about white feminism and intersectionality, and the importance of intersectionality, because I think within mainstream feminism right now, it's very exclusive, and I don't think there's like a lot of topics that we get to talk about or really appreciate without kind of slandering people of color.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to decide who's going to go first. Who's going to go first?
You're going first, Brandon.
I'm going first?
It's 2 against 1.
Okay, fine. I'll go first. So the things I started to look into with the food was I first looked at everybody at this school in a way, or students in general, because number one thing I see and have seen from first year is that like there's not, and I'm generalizing here a little bit, but the stereotype is true for all university students. There's not very many people that like leave home and like know how to cook like really well. They can boil some water, throw some pasta in there, and like I made a meal, cool. But there's a bit of a struggle for people to eat healthy and still be able to do that in a short amount of time. And so what actually winds up happening is people wind up going and buying inexpensive junk food, so to say, because it fills their belly and it's inexpensive and it costs them no time. So I was looking into what that means, and then when you start to look into like kind of like mid to lower class families, different government programs, there's one in the States and multiple in Canada, they try and look at how can we tell lower income families to eat healthier, to eat better. And the funny thing is they very, very infrequently do they actually look at how much it costs to eat healthy and then compare that across in terms of education to these families. So you are a middle to low income person or student, and you're like, man, the dollar menu at McDonald's, I can get 5 double cheeseburgers and spend $5 and like be so full I could like fall asleep. Or what can I do with that other $5 at the grocery store? I can maybe buy a head of lettuce, maybe a tomato, and maybe a cucumber, and like That's it. Cool. I made myself a small salad. Small salad or 5 double cheeseburgers. Well, I'm really hungry right now, so I'm going to go with the 5 double cheeseburgers. And kind of across the board, that's the whole mentality. And then part of that starts to bleed into education, because people aren't always being shown like what is a very economical way to eat, but is something also very healthy for people. And so I kind of wanted to know what you guys thought about that.
You want to go first?
You can go first.
No, I think you should actually.
Well, I don't ask a question.
Well, like, do you guys agree with that statement that people don't eat healthy because they are either not educated on how to do so via cooking skills or what are healthy, inexpensive things to eat, or people just eat junk food, so to say McDonald's, whatever, fast food, because it's convenient for them? Like, do you agree with any of that or disagree or anything to add to that?
I agree that it's convenient.
Yeah.
And it's probably why I also eat like junk food all the time. Like
Right.
nothing else, just junk food.
Yeah.
But and it's like also cheaper just like at the moment.
Yep.
But like what I've realized is that like when you like actually go and like go grocery shopping
Mhm.
and like you kind of like buy like all these like healthy items, you kind of have more to eat during the week than if you just bought junk food and it'll last you like one day.
Yeah. I mean,
So you save money in that sense, but then I don't think we think about long term
Right.
when we're going to like eat junk food, McDonald's and whatever.
Yeah. What do you think, Kelsey?
I think I do agree, but I think it's for a lot of different reasons. I know my mom, she lives by herself right now,
Mhm.
and when my brother isn't there, she'll always just go out and buy fast food, because if she doesn't and she's baking things or whatever and she's a really busy person,
Sure.
all of her leftovers will spoil in the fridge or go bad, and
Okay.
her fruits and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on the person that you're dealing with. Also, it's situational.
So in terms of like lifestyle, then it would be something to add to that category.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like I know in my family, or at least in my household, like during school here, I will try and cook like for a week and a half, like one day, and I'll spend an hour doing that, so I have something to eat during the week. Because the same thing in like my household, like when I'm at home on co-ops and things, my dad and I will cook for 2-3 weeks in advance, and it'll be like 3 different dishes, so you have something different every day, and that winds up being cheaper on the whole than like going out and eating something. But here, like, I'm like, oh crap, what up? I got $3 in quarters, nickels, dimes. What can I get? Bombay. I can get 3 veggie samosas for not even $3, and I'm stuffed. Okay, I'm gonna go do that, because for me to go and try and spend $3 right now at the grocery store, I'm not gonna buy anything of use to me, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I grew up like right like in the city, and like that's where my high school was as well.
Mhm.
And like a lot of people, they didn't eat at school just because literally like 5 minutes away there was McDonald's, Popeyes, pizza,
Right.
and like just everything.
Right.
So I think like just like having like these things nearby you
Mhm.
as well kind of like contributes to why you would want to just go there instead of making something for yourself in the morning.
Right.
It's like, oh, I can sleep in, or like I can sleep in much later if
Right.
I just like spend a couple bucks on lunch today.
Now, do you also think that is something like from a generational perspective, that because people aren't cooking as frequently as they used to, say, that that's something that they're not so skilled in doing? Like, do you think because it's so convenient for us to like run to McDonald's, spend $1, buy a double cheeseburger, cool, like lunch is good, do you think that because people are doing that more often and not cooking at home, that that's a skill that's being lost?
Well, I think before, like most people cooked because like it was necessary, right?
Mhm.
Like things weren't completely available for them.
Mm-hmm.
So like now, since everything is available, then the people who aren't that interested in cooking,
Mhm.
we're just like, okay, so now I can just like buy things and like not cook for myself. But like people who are actually interested in cooking,
Mhm.
they still practice that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I don't know. I think that there is actually like a decline in people cooking. And I can kind of see that a little bit here with some of my roommates in the past. You open their fridge, you're like, there's nothing in your fridge. What are you eating?
Yeah.
Air? And I think that would be something interesting to like maybe try and reintroduce into like, you know, universities is like trying to teach people how to cook efficiently for themselves. Like I know there are numerous people like in my year that will eat one thing for like 4 days. Like I know somebody ate canned fish for honestly like 3 or 4 days straight, and just that, and everyone's like, that's really unhealthy. I hope you know that. Like, great, you got your iron and protein from the fish, but I think you needed more vitamins and nutrients from other things.
At least it was something more substantial. Like for me, like last week, I bought 1 Pringles can and I spread it over for 4 days for lunch.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not a healthy lunch.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
gosh.
bad.
Yeah.
But like I think people here, like I was surprised. Everyone's much like in the house that we live. Me and Kelsey and I, like
Right.
we live together.
Yep.
And like people in our house are always cooking for themselves all the
Okay.
time, which is something new for me because I don't see that often.
Right.
Because the people I used to like, probably because we didn't live together, but like they actually cooked for themselves and they go to school and they
Mhm.
eat the food that they make.
Mhm.
When I don't do that.
Right.
I buy my food all the time, which is not a good thing.
So do you buy your lunches and dinners and things just out of like just convenience and not spending the time to cook, or?
Yeah, convenience,
Yeah.
probably. And I don't think I can cook. Like I can do like simple things.
Sure.
Like I know how to use the stove, but like like I can't. Like, what's something that you make all the time?
I don't know. I make a lot of fish and ground beef and stuff.
I don't even know how I would attempt to make that.
Well, I can teach you.
I don't want to learn.
Oh my gosh.
How come? It could actually wind up being pretty useful.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
situational, though.
Yeah, I know that it's bad. That's the thing. It's just, but I can't, like, I don't have the motivation to do something.
There's gonna come a time when you're on co-op in like some distant land.
Oh, yeah, I
And you're like-
definitely know that.
You're like, I have 10 pesos. Need to feed myself for the next month. What do I buy?
That's really bad.
Okay, maybe not that extreme, but to a point. And I mean, like, I find that on co-op too. It's like, you can eat out every day, but then you look at your paycheck at the end of the day, like, dang, I spent 40% of my earnings on like coffee and like lunches and stuff, and transit cost me the other 20% of my paycheck, so I really don't have that much money left.
Yeah, I asked one of my friends, she like lives in New York,
Right.
and I was like, because I was planning on going there, and she was like going through all her expenses for the month,
Mhm.
and she was like, oh, it's mostly your rent and your transportation, and
Yep.
I'm like, what about food? And it's like, I don't even want to think about that,
Yeah.
because like in New York, it's like you kind of spend money, you eat out a lot,
Right.
and then she just doesn't even like think about it.
Yeah. Well, actually, a friend of mine, Thomas, came back from New York on his co-op, and he was like, man, you know, like you learn very quickly all like the really, really cheap places to go eat, where like you can spend like $3 for like dinner or whatever and like be good with that. Because like almost every other place is going to be super expensive. So, yeah.
Dollar pizza.
Yeah,
Dollar pizza where?
Everywhere in New York.
everywhere.
It's really gross though, but
Uh.
whatever, you do it.
Actually, no, just try. I remember when we were there, we found like a really cheap pizza, and then I found really cheap Philly cheesesteak somewhere. Like a
Oh.
whole foot long Philly cheesesteak was like $2.
That's questionable.
Yeah. But so is also the dollar pizza.
No, it's not. I am not getting a $2 steak.
It's
Because like you can actually see everything that's on the pizza,
Right.
Or like the steak, you're just like, what's in this?
What
What-
are you?
it's,
Yeah.
it's cheese and steak and peppers on a bun.
I guess I'm not
That's
that
not
trusting.
steak. That is not steak.
Okay. Well, seeing as there's a bit of a pause, I think we'll
Yeah,
transition
it's
over.
also like just in terms of like
Why
people
not?
what they like eating as well, right? Like if you want to like eat like full meals and stuff, you're gonna spend a lot more if you go out.
Sure.
Well, if people are just like, okay, I can have a slice of pizza, I'll be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is you.
but that's not the healthiest thing either. Eventually, like your body's gonna break down, and like you're gonna.
Oh, it's happening. This is not something that I'm unaware of. This is just slow decline.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be dead in 8 years.
That's not good.
It's okay.
We just gotta learn how to cook, okay, really quickly, and then you'll be fine. Yeah. Anyway, I think we'll transition over to the next topic. I think we beat that one to death. So who wants to take first, Kelsey or Samiha?
Samiha's going.
Samiha's gonna go first. Okay.
Reluctant.
So we're talking about intersectionality, right?
Yeah, and white feminism. But first, I want to like go through some definitions first, because I think when people hear the word feminism, they're just like, oh,
Yeah, no.
like they get taken aback by it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to like go over some.
Well, like that was something that stood out to me about the articles that you posted. I was like, I had to read through everything first before I started to understand what was happening. And so I definitely think like giving like a good broad stroke of what everything is, and then like some definitions will help start to shape the conversation a little bit.
The articles that I like put up as well, I gave it was a variety of things. Some were like a more dumbed down, and some were like more in depth.
Yep.
But right. So misandry is prejudice against men.
Okay.
Misogyny is prejudice against women.
Mm-hmm.
And feminism is what combats the two.
Okay.
It's the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, economical, and social equality to men.
Sure.
Right. So now white feminism.
Mm-hmm.
It's feminism that promises the experiences and prioritizes the experiences and voices of cisgender, straight, white women over women of color, queer, and others who don't fit in that narrow identity. And it works on the assumption that everyone, all women, are like equally oppressed.
Okay.
Right. And but like that's just like it's not true, because like a lot of like the biggest topic right now, I guess, is like equal pay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So like in terms of feminism, but like they always say, oh, like women get paid this much according to men, but what they don't bring up is that like black women and Hispanic women get paid even less than that.
Sure.
That's not a topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a new movie that's out right now, or it's coming out, called Suffragette,
Mm-hmm.
which is like about like
The suffragette movement.
yeah.
Yep.
So like there's been a lot of criticism about the movie in relation to like the fact that they don't like include the whole, like there's not a lot of women of color in it.
Sure.
So, and it's honestly, it's more reflective of that time as well, how little women of color were actually included in that conversation.
Okay.
Right? So it was like, because women of color, they got their right to vote much after
Mm-hmm.
than actual women. So
Mm-hmm.
like white women,
Mhm.
actual women, oh my
Actual
God.
woman.
Oh, real woman. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, so it just shows that women's rights don't include, like the mainstream women's rights don't include women of color in the dialogue, even when fighting for women.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not inclusive, and its
Mhm.
exclusivity isn't accidental. Do you guys know the show Mad Men?
Yep.
Yep.
Right. So like in the show is like about like the 60s ad. It's set in the 60s in like
Yeah.
an ad agency.
Yep.
And it's one of the main characters, Peggy Olson. She's like in a very male dominated industry,
Sure.
and she's like the only like female copywriter there.
Mm-hmm.
And like she feels like she gets left out a lot, and like she kind of feels like, oh, she's a part of this now,
Mhm.
right? But then whenever like all the men are just like, oh, like, so this is right? We're gonna go do this, and then Peggy like tags along, and
Mhm.
then they're just like, oh no, not you, even
Mhm.
though they're at the same level of power.
Okay.
So, and then Peggy realizes that she's not, even though she's employed in that agency and she's like very good at her job, she's not included in the we. And so now I'm just saying how at this moment, it's
Mhm.
kind of like moved on. So like white women are the ones that are part of the we, and
Mhm.
women of color aren't.
Mm-hmm. Was there a time period that happened, like, or has this been something that's always existed?
It's always existed, but like only recently have people kind of labeled it as white feminism.
Okay.
But now I'm like getting into intersectionality, which is a term that was created by this black feminist writer, like in the 80s, I think.
Was she the law student?
I think so.
Yeah, I read that article.
But yeah, like she's like very important in the whole movement.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, intersectionality and how like it's important to acknowledge that different circumstances kind of call for different levels of complication, and it calls for a feminism that truly fights for all women without any restrictions. But
right, I think one of the examples she gave in the in her paper that she wrote was why it's called intersectionality, is you're at an intersection and one of two things happens in an accident. How do you determine which more of one thing happened than the other, or how do you classify that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of like the definition and concept. How does that apply to the whole general feminism subject?
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna be speaking more about like how like women of color, like their voices get shut down a lot by, because like you can't move forward without actually hearing like what they have to say and like the experience that they go through. But like how women of color and white women are kind of held at like different standards of feminism. And for example, I'm gonna like tie in on like a lot of pop culture into this because I think it's relevant and it gets people more interested in the thing, I think, and I think it helps to further like clarify the examples and topics. So like things are going on, so you kind of can relate to it. But like Lena Dunham, her show Girls on HBO, she's like prided as like a huge like feminist, and like people like praise her all the time for the show, which is like super sexual and super like it's a lot of nudity and all that, and it's very empowering for women. But the problem about it is the fact that it's set in New York, and it's like the most whitewashed version of New York ever. You don't like it's bad. Except for like the one time they added like a black guy into the second season because of the criticism. But the black guy was like a Republican, which was like, oh yeah, great, thanks for throwing that one in. Oh my god. But like, and then Beyonce, who is literally Beyonce, right? She like uses the label feminist a lot, and she identifies with it, and she like like advocates the whole movement. And then Annie Lennox, who's like a huge like musician, she was like, oh no, Beyonce is not a feminist, and was like criticizing like her like provocative dancing as something, as like a reason for her not to be a feminist. But like, so it kind of like shows like how like the basis for like these criticisms are so like the same thing. Like Miley and like Taylor and like Lena and all those people, they're like doing the same things, but like people like Nicki, Rihanna, and Beyonce get criticized heavily for the same things that like Miley would get praised for. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely something you see in pop culture, like not to take it to the Twitter level, but there's always like little Twitter battles between Nicki and Taylor.
That's like the huge thing that happened over the summer, right? And like it's a super important thing to acknowledge, because like it's something that happens all the time, and the fact that like it got that much publicity was really great. That's why I love pop culture, because I think it brings like a lot of heavy topics into the mainstream and makes people like address it.
Yeah, it makes people aware of them, and yeah.
But yeah, like it's just about how like all these like people of color are publicly shamed for criticizing white women's problematic actions as well. Like again, Nicki and Taylor. Nicki called out like the industry, and then Taylor kind of took it personally, and then Miley for some reason had to insert herself into the situation, and was like, no, Nicki, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, maybe I do, because this is what I'm experiencing as a black woman, and you're experiencing as someone who like wants to benefit just in terms of profit, the image. But like, yeah, Nicki, Taylor, and Miley, and then Amanda Stenberg and Kylie Jenner. She like, Amanda called out Kylie for like appropriation. And then like Kylie completely dismissed it and was like, no, it's not wrong. Like it was so like, it was dumb. Like I can't even like talk about it, because that was like literally the dumbest thing. That's she's an idiot. But like, yeah, like when you shut down like all of these like opinions, whenever they bring up the fact that like they don't feel safe, or like they feel like they're being
criticized for everything.
For everything, and they're like missing out on opportunities. And like when they voice those things, they're all like, it's always shut down, and it just like solidifies like this systematic oppression that's like existed since time. Right. But yeah, like it uses the whole angry black girl narrative, and like in opposition to like the innocent white. Like if you see like the whole Nikki and Taylor, like how they kind of reported on it, it was like this picture of like Nikki, like from one of her like rap videos or something, like making a face, right? Like from like 4 years ago, and then like Taylor in like this like white dress, like all looking angelic. It's like, oh, she's the victim in this situation. But like it's like these little things that kind of like condition you to think that, oh, this black is wrong, white is right. But yeah, it's like
but do you think in having a lot of these topics brought into pop culture like this is making people more aware, or do you think it's...
I definitely think so, because I think more people are talking about it a lot more, and like when you like see people like Nicki, who has like this huge like fan base, and like Beyonce and Rihanna, and like they kind of promote like a very they're like, they may not identify, like they say, like fully say that they're feminist, but they like promote these values that are very applicable to like everyone. Right. But like when they do like bring things up, like everyone's always like, oh, why do you have to make it about race and like all this crap? And it's like, oh, it's just feminism. It's supposed to be like unity. It's not about race. It's just all of us. But the thing is,
so that comes back to the idea of intersectionality.
Yeah, and it's just like it's really fake, because like you're just using like this excuse of unity to like pin, like you're blaming the woman for a problem when you should be like talking about the problem.
You're talking about the system
system. So like, and then it just shuts down the whole thing. Like you shift the blame onto the woman of color, and that way you don't have to address it. Right. Like you're exercising your white privilege, and then accusing women of color of like creating divisions when in fact they're trying to bring to light the
multiplicity that exists inside feminism.
So like if you really were like all about all women, when these women like speak up about like their issues and how they feel, like they're like how they're being oppressed because of their gender in relation to race and whatnot, like you should be listening to them, not being like, oh no, you, like that's not right just because it doesn't fit into your perception.
Well, like that's what Katy Perry did when she came in on that Twitter argument between, I'm not sure if it was Taylor and Nicki or what, it was Taylor and somebody, and Katy Perry came in and she said, how can you be standing up for women when you're attacking another woman?
I think I remember reading that.
So
that was just, what I was trying to talk about, because right now that's like a huge thing in pop culture.
Absolutely.
And I think more people kind of need to address all of these.
Now let me ask a question. We've been talking about feminism in general here. Do you think that there is a role in pop culture, or even not in pop culture, for men to kind of step in and start to say, like, maybe, voice their opinions on how they think feminism should be sort of approached in some sense? Like, do you feel like this conversation is only something to stay on just the one side and let everyone, like, let the feminists deal with how to sort out feminism? Or do you think, because, like, personally, not to phrase this very carefully, I think that feminism is important, but I also feel that when things like that are talked about, that there's almost the extreme side of feminism that is very like anti-men.
Again, that's
why
that's
not feminism.
Defined.
No, I know that's not feminism.
That's why I had to define both the things, because that's exactly what everyone thinks. It's that feminism is anti-male when it's not the case. If people who say that they're feminists are like anti-male, then they're misandrous.
Okay. Like, let me be clear. I wasn't trying to compare the two. I was just trying to say, like, when people think of pop culture, they think of that misandrous, and then they also think of, like, Taylor Swift versus Nicki Minaj, and I think that there's this sort of middle ground between them that really isn't being spoken about or represented properly.
First of all, like in general feminism, the fact that they're like pitting like these two women against each other.
Well, absolutely.
That was just like incorrect, just on a whole nother level. But
Right.
like their interaction was also important as well, just like aside from that.
Mhm.
But I just like totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
But no, I think there is room for like men, because like even Emma Watson, like she has like this whole, like she's trying to bring men into like the conversation.
Yep.
Because you do need allies, right? Every movement needs allies.
Yep.
So it's more about just like how men can like listen to like these issues and
Mhm.
like kind of sympathize with them and like agree, like, and just like listen to what they're saying and like,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, because I think to take feminism and kind of and flip the board over, there was something in the gaming community called Gamergate that was brewing for a long time here. Are either of you guys familiar with what happened with Gamergate? Does it ring a bell? Mean anything?
No.
Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown on this. Essentially, and I hope I'm getting my facts straight on this because I didn't pre-research this, but essentially Gamergate was the gaming community, which is predominantly guys, in terms of like first-person shooters and strategy games, and it is predominantly guys, and there was a growing population of females that were saying that, look at all these characters in the games, they're all very over-sexualized, and we don't feel that that is okay, because there isn't the opposite side of the coin. It'd be fine if, there was like over-sexualized men in games, and then, there was the equal part of that in female, but it's not. And all these game developers are only developing the one side, and we don't feel that we're being represented. And then the immature men in the gaming community said, no, it's always been like this and we want it to stay like this, and fought for it basically. And there was a lot of death threats made to women because they voiced their opinions about and that
happens all the time.
Exactly. And I think that there should be this kind of middle C between all of this, because on one hand we have feminism, and what was the extremism of that?
Misandry.
Misandry. So there's feminism, misandry, and then there's like Gamergate on the other side, and I think
Which is misogyny.
Misogyny. Well, yeah, and I think there needs to be this sort of middle C, because I feel like there's all these sort of sub-compartmentalized topics of discussion, but really they kind of fall under one umbrella. But kind of to tie it back to what you were saying with Emma Watson, like she was saying, it's not just about one group or the other group, it's kind of about uniting everybody. And really what a lot of these groups and individuals are trying to fight for is sort of an equality from person to person. And I think that gets lost when people start to segment themselves off, and there's sub-movements and sub-movements. And I really think it's the topic of like you treating one person the same way you wish to be treated in a way. I don't know.
That's what feminism is. It's
Right.
like the balance between the two ends of the spectrum, right?
Okay.
So that's basically what Samiha is discussing here, and also what you're discussing with your topic.
Mhm.
I actually just saw an article online a few days ago
Right.
about, it was saying that in movies, women are always praised, actresses are always praised for playing strong women and playing strong characters, and that this is totally inappropriate and everything, because men are never praised for being strong men.
It's literally like every movie you'll find a character like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's kind of going on what you're saying also.
Right.
So,
But like there's some like really like awesome things out right now that are like super progressive, and like I'm just like super into like like movies and television and music, so
Sure.
I'm
as an
obviously gonna
architecture
recommend
student is.
some stuff to people to like actually so they can see things that are inclusive,
Mhm.
so, and how it differs from like anything else.
So what might be some examples of that, so other people could maybe follow up on that?
There's like this really good TV show right now called How to Get Away with Murder.
Okay.
It's
popular.
Yeah, so popular, but like it's like so awesome because it's like the narratives don't depend on like people's sexuality and race,
Sure.
but then they address the fact that this is actually something that would shape their own world.
Right.
So then like they can, like the characters are much more complex
Mhm.
and more interesting and more identifiable with like how the actual world is, because like if you go outside, it's not always going to be like white people, right?
True.
Right, but then that's like what the worlds that are depicted in media all the time,
Very true.
right? So like it's much more reflective of how real life is. And like there's a bunch of new shows, like in terms of what I said, like intersectionality, intersectionality
Mm-hmm.
and how like stories of people of color and like people with like different cultural backgrounds, they're not represented enough, and like they don't get a platform to speak about their issues. But there's like a lot of like new shows like Jane the Virgin especially. It's like about like it's a Mexican family, and it's like it's presented very well. Again, like it's the narratives don't depend on like their race and their culture, but like it definitely shapes how they see things. So, and like people have been praising that show a lot because it like is a much more accurate depiction of Mexican culture and how they interact with one another.
Right.
And it's not something that's depicted in popular media, because even the actress, the main actress, Gina Rodriguez, she got offered to play, like it was a desperate housewife character or something.
Right.
But like that's like a huge stereotype.
Absolutely.
And then she totally passed on that. That would have been like such a huge career thing for her.
Sure.
But she was like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't think it reflects my story properly.
Good.
And then, you know, like she's on Jane the Virgin now, which is a very highly acclaimed TV show.
Yeah.
And then there's Empire, which is a huge phenomenon right now.
I've heard about it. I haven't actually watched it yet. But
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah.
Like I think because it's a predominantly like black show,
Right.
but like in the show you get to kind of see the different aspects of black life that we don't get to see all the time, and they can address certain issues that's within their society. Like one of the characters is gay, and like one of the huge like plots of the show is kind of like navigating just like how the black community feels about homosexuality, because like it's something that's very like taboo. I feel like they don't talk about it much.
Yep.
So like seeing like these stories kind of come out is much more interesting, and you get to like learn about all these different people that you might not get to meet
Otherwise.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think that those qualities add some complexity and duality to the characters that gives a richer storyline. It's not it's the token black guy and in a horror movie.
And that's all he's only there like to be like, oh snap,
yeah,
one line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the whole video game thing actually kind of like got me thinking about something else.
Right.
Have you seen Mad Max?
I've seen Mad Max. Yeah.
That movie was so good, just like as a movie, but like that movie was hugely praised for its feminist views.
Yeah.
But like they didn't start off with that. That wasn't their intention. It was just kind of creating like the most real storyline as possible. Like it's not gonna it's not gonna kind of, because there's like a lot of models in there, but they're not like sexualized in the movie. Like Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, who is like a supermodel. Sure. But like, because even if you see her in like Transformers, the way she's presented in both,
represented is completely different.
It's completely different because like she has an actual like
role to play.
Yeah. And like that entire movie, you kind of see like a lot of different kinds of women, and they're like involved in like this act of redemption.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because the whole Mad Max has been like, Mad Max, the character.
Yeah.
But in Fury Road, what came out this summer,
it was Furiosa.
It was Furiosa that took the spotlight and all that. And I remember, because I didn't understand the movie. Like I sat down, I'm like, it's 2 hours. For the first time I watched it, I was like, this is 2 hours in the desert driving around.
It's a single car chase for 2 hours.
Essentially. And I was like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. But I like stopped and I went back and I listened to a whole bunch of like reviews and like people I respect in terms of their criticism about it. And I was like, oh, okay, now I can understand.
It was like it was universally acclaimed.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody everywhere was like, this is the best movie of the summer. It was high action. But like, I mean, now that you bring it to light, there were those sort of subtle undertones that kind of strengthened the movie in terms of shaping it. Like Furiosa was definitely one of the main characters in that.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see, because like Mad Max was a very like testosterone, like metal and driven and like chrome on her teeth and we'll all go to, like, it was just like, it was that mentality, but there was that gentle sort of subtle undertone of feminism in the movie that like it wasn't slap in your face like here's feminism. It was done as it should be, I think.
the best part about it is like how Max and Furiosa kind of like interact with each other, because like usually in like action movies it would be like the guy, like he doesn't like believe like this girl can do things, and then she has to like prove it and be like, yeah, my brother taught me, like I learned it from my dad. But then like
I know how to fish.
Yeah, exactly. Like that he's like surprised, like, oh, now I see you as like equal being.
Whoa, I didn't know you.
But
you're
like,
actually telling the truth.
Exactly. But like that wasn't in the movie, right?
Right.
Like they had like a mutual respect for each other, like right at the beginning. And if he had any mistrust, because he's like
he's been stepped on most of his life, so his ability to trust people is not specific to a race or a gender. It's just people in general. Yeah. No,
he like walks alone in the desert, right?
Exactly.
And that's also why he doesn't talk the whole movie, I think, which is I think it helps, because people are like, oh, like he's not even talking the whole movie, how is like he the main character? But it's like, if you were by yourself, like in the desert and the world is like, it's like the apocalypse, right,
and everyone is looking to kill you, essentially. Like,
are you gonna be like freaking like conversing like perfectly, especially when you've been living as an animal, like tied up like as a blood bag? You're not going to.
But like, to go back to that, I do think that movie did it perfectly, because there's a group I listen to, Freddie Wong and the Rocket Jump cast. Shout out to anyway, so I listened to their review of Fury Road, but they also do a lot of interesting things on film production, because they are predominantly like small filmmakers. And one thing they talked about to kind of connect this, which kind of also ties back into feminism, is they talked about CGI. And they said that people always point out bad CGI, but people never point out good CGI, because you don't have to. It's there. And even if like it's like dragons and everything else like that, it's not in your face that you're looking at CGI. And I think to kind of draw that connection to feminism in that movie, it wasn't here's feminism, we're just going to wipe it all over the screen, because that would have like angered critics, and people would have been like, this is an outrage. People were still
angry. Like they were like huge like male rights activists that were like, we're gonna ban this movie, no one's gonna see it. Like,
I mean, with anything you have extremists on either ends of the scale. You're not gonna please everybody, but I mean,
but I like that reaction though. I thought was like hilarious, because it's like, oh, like they're just presented as equal, like people there. There's no like hierarchy, so why is that like?
And I think that much like bad CGI, when there's a topic that's smeared in people's faces, like here it is, make sure you see it, and it's not done subtly, that's when people like notice it. But like this movie nailed it perfectly, and I think that there's a lot of other TV shows and things you talked about that could actually start to change that movement, because I don't think we need big extremist moves, because that doesn't get very much long term. I think it's this big cultural shift that has to change eventually, and that's going to happen with all these sort of subtle undertones that work in that things become not so much a male dominated movie or a female dominated movie, but that there's this nice blend between the two of them that ties it all together.
And like in each kind of medium you get to see, like in girls, like you see a lot of nudity, and like it's this, she's not like skinny, she's like overweight, but then she kind of just like walks around as if like there's nothing wrong with it. And like that was like a statement that I think was like, it was good, even though that whole show was like super whitewashed, but like it has its value in that sense for a specific group of people, nonetheless. But and then on How to Get Away with Murder, you see like this black woman, she takes off her wig, which is something that you don't get to see, right? And like it's kind of like, it's at the end of the day, she goes home and she takes it off, and it's like this small like ritual that like people can identify with now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And like it's all these like tiny little things that people like, you can tie into like media and whatnot that can kind of progress like this whole movement.
Well, I think with that, because we're approaching time here, I think we should shift over to Kelsey before we just run off into the next hour, because Mad Max could go on for another 2 hours.
Oh my gosh,
okay, well, we're going to move on. So, Kelsey, we were going to talk about the adult film industry, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, I guess I'll begin with discussing the different feminist positions on the adult film industry, and it roughly breaks down into 3 categories. So, the first category meaning that the adult film industry is an expression of male culture through which women are exploited. So those are porn feminists.
Sure.
The second would be the I don't approve, but everyone has the right to consume or produce words or images, which is liberal feminism. And then the third being that the adult film industry has benefits for women, which I'm going to be talking about today, which is pro-sex feminism.
Okay.
So I think the most important and first aspect that I want to discuss is that the adult entertainment industry is a service industry. It's a career, much like any other industry, right.
like being a movie star or a producer, musician, artist.
Right. And with respect to any of those industries, it's separate from your real life.
Oh, absolutely.
More like reflective of the society, but like it's not literal, like
it is not literally the same.
Yeah. I mean, like there's a reason people have like stage names or character names.
Exactly.
They're creating a character for themselves, much like many like rappers and other people like that. Like their name is not, whatever. It's
except for Kanye
you don't know
West.
any rappers' real names, do you?
No.
No, he doesn't.
It shows.
Or Wheezy. If I ever met a guy named Wheezy, I'd be like, okay, whatever. But anyway.
Kanye West, that's his real name, right, Samiha?
Did you say Wheezy or Yeezy?
Maybe I said both.
He said Wheezy.
No, one's Lil Wayne, one's Kanye West.
Yeah. But anyway, so it's an industry, and they themselves create characters because that's not what they do when they're not working.
Right. And so like any industry, there's a business side, and that side of the business is not perfect.
Sure.
And women need to understand capitalism and the consequences of stock agreements, either through professional aid or not, before they sign into these contracts. And in my mind, a fair deal means making sure that the exploitation of this woman is mutual and balanced. Because a lot of people, especially during their first contract, will get screwed over.
Sure.
Literally.
Yeah, they will literally get screwed over.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I mean I read the one article you posted by Stoya,
right?
And she was saying that it's important that you do what you want to do and you don't do what you don't want to do. Exactly. And I think that's ubiquitous across anything. Like you're not gonna, if you go work a job and somebody says go jump in this ditch, you're like, I'm gonna die if I do that. I'm not gonna do that. Like you as a person have the right to say so.
Exactly.
Much like any other industry.
But a lot of women going into the industry, especially the amateur stars who are 18 years old getting into this, they aren't
allegedly 18
years old, aren't fully aware of what like their contract is letting them do it, or what.
Sure.
Like a lot of them don't even read the fine print.
It's dangerous.
Exactly, especially in this industry. But a lot of people will, like for example, a lot of girls will think that they're going to a shoot to just perform regular oral, and they'll get there and it'll be extreme, and they won't realize that they have to vomit and before the shoot can end in order to make their money.
Right.
And so just examples like that, like people who are getting into this industry need to be aware of what they're getting into fully.
Absolutely.
And it goes along with workers' rights issues. Like there's a whole different part of the spectrum here. Like there's many different people being treated in different variety of ways throughout the industry. So basically, I made a little list of, if you want to get into the industry, first decide what kind of films you...
Wait, I need to like write this down.
Yeah, you do need to write this down. It's great. So first you need to decide what type of film you want to do. And you have to understand, before you even get into this, you need to understand that the average career of a star is way shorter than anybody thinks. Like not everybody is going to end up being Stoya or James Dean. You're like, a lot of girls will get into this and their career will last a maximum of 6 months. Right. And they also have to understand the payment, and that you're not getting paid as much as you think you will be getting paid. Sure. Like for a regular straight scene, girls are getting paid about $800. And then an additional $100 per man that's added in. Right. Also, girls need to understand that it is a job.
Yep.
And so you have to be on time, you have to do STI tests, you have to pass the STI test.
Well, it's like any job. There's requirements.
Exactly.
To it. Like,
So, like, not like looking down on women like, oh, you don't know how to go to the doctor to get a STI test, but like,
no, but it's
these are just like things that like everyone should consider, but like some people don't, I guess.
Exactly. A lot of the younger girls getting into it don't think of this stuff.
But do you think in all of this that like there should be some sort of unionization or something, because like, is it such an I don't want to say epidemic, is there such a large group of people that this is happening to, who are quote unquote being taken advantage of, that don't realize it, that there should be a push for some sort of standardization and unionization to everything?
Well, a lot of the people involved in the industry right now are discussing that there isn't unionization,
right,
and how there should be, because there's a lot more than just who appears on the box cover.
Oh, absolutely.
Like there's directors, there's the crew,
there's the camera people, there's
exactly,
there's like lots, and like it's like any film. You have the actors, but then you also have the support staff, and you have the administrative staff, you have the producers, directors, and everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of those people also would be involved in this unionization, but it hasn't gotten there yet, and but they do want that. But more so, specific accusations that are being hurled at the adult film industry right now. One specifically is that it's degrading to women.
Okay.
And the term it's degrading itself is very subjective. And so every woman has the right to define what is degrading and what is liberating for her own body.
Sure.
And also, like, a woman is more like, there's different aspects to every human being. Like, if somebody said to a woman that she's all brains and really smart, like, that isn't deemed as degrading.
No.
But if somebody is said that their body is like what's being brought out in them, that's degrading. And so why?
Sure.
Or
I think it's just like, if it was just like
Yeah.
your body, then that's like what people are.
Exactly, but there's other examples too. Like, people say they're spiritual and like their soul and different things, and people are okay with that.
Right.
But what's the difference between, why is it degrading to be sexualized? And
In that context.
In
the
that context.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we also have to remember.
Exactly.
Because like, obviously, if it was like in architecture school, like, people were like sexualizing you constantly and harassing you.
No,
that's like inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that is being hurled at the industry is that pornography leads to violence against women. And so men viewing it are similar or related to men who attack women, specifically through rape.
Right.
But through all studies, even pro-censorship studies have said that there is no correlation. There's no proven correlation between men viewing porn and then rape.
Committing a violent act.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's also another side of why somebody who is in the pro-sex defense, one of their reasons against it, or for it, I suppose, would be that saying that people who do have these urges can somehow watch porn and, like, I don't know how to describe that. They'll have, like, what's that word? Like a catharsis effect. So they won't go out and perform the acts because they're living through this video that they're watching.
Sure.
And so in that way, it's viewed as a protective barrier for women. And also, studies have been done in Japan where pornography is highly available.
Sure.
And it's very graphic and brutal there. And
Yeah.
the rape levels are actually much lower, like per capita, opposed to places like the United States.
So really, in what you're saying here is that there really isn't a direct correlation between consumption of, anything out of the adult film industry and the supposed violence that is supposed to come from that.
Exactly.
I think the violence is like, it's not like directly related and it's not provable, but like I think it does occur from like other like media representations.
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's the same argument that people say that like watching violent movies makes violent people.
Or games.
Or violent games make, I mean.
I think like over time, like the conditioning can have maybe an effect, or maybe just like tell you that it's okay to do this.
Sure. I mean, overconsumption of anything, and if that is your only source of consumption, that
exactly.
If you sit there and you play violent video games 10 hours a day, every day for a year, there's going to be some slow conditioning that's going to happen.
You're going to like go outside and like freak out on someone.
Or I mean, in a situation where you aren't completely yourself, or you're not 100% there mentally, your subconscious could kick in and take over, and everything you've been conditioned to could accidentally come out in such a situation like that. But I would agree. I don't think there is necessarily a direct correlation between the two.
And we're not talking extreme cases
here,
right?
Yeah.
Like we're just talking generally, like a regular person,
right?
Who on average,
like just like recreational,
right?
Yeah,
like recreational.
The status quo.
Yes. Yeah. Whatever that may be per person. So also.
We're also going to have to wrap it up here in like the next minute.
Okay, I'm almost done. I'm just on my last point here. So it's also true that pornography provides a lot of sexual information for people. Mm-hmm. Like also for women, like even like basic information like masturbation for women, which isn't a very talked about topic, or like it isn't really explored even for women. Women don't even feel comfortable really talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like that, even just in general, people don't feel as comfortable talking about sex and discussing sex.
Sure.
In general. So viewing people in general, not even just women. Mm-hmm. So when you can view this,
it just like makes you more comfortable with the idea.
Exactly. You get more comfortable. You get different information other than textbooks or discussions that could be provided.
I think there's also a flip side of the coin to that we could get into much later, in terms of like how, the overconsumption of, or if that is the only thing or first thing you're ever exposed to in terms of like learning about things, could be very damaging. I think there's a duality to this conversation as well. But we're unfortunately going to have to wrap it up because we're at an hour. We could maybe continue this in a part 2 episode later on down the road, because I think there's more information here to pull out.
Yeah, we definitely it was like a very broad touch on like all of these topics.
Yeah, and I mean like that's the whole point of BRIDGECast is to bring to light some of these topics that hopefully we can start to foster more conversation about these things that people may not necessarily be aware of. Yeah.
It's just like an intro to the conversation and the topic.
More or less. we want to try and bring to people, topics that they, or more information on things they may not
and
necessarily
the in-depth
know about.
Conversations can like occur
can
outside.
Happen afterwards, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's been lovely talking with you two. Thank you for being the host of This Week on the BRIDGECast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. For everyone listening, we do this every Tuesday, 9:30 to 10:30 in the Bridge space at 3537 Main Street. You can find us on YouTube and SoundCloud. We hope to also be on iTunes pretty soon as well too, because people apparently get a lot of their podcasts from there. And we encourage everybody to come out and sit in the audience. We have a few audience members here. We will hopefully have the microphone working for next week, that we can actually get some opinions from people, because that was one of the mission statements, was to involve people and the community, much like Bridge is trying to do with all their other initiatives. And we hope to have that going by next week. But I think we're at time, so we will see you guys all next week. Thanks for listening.